Okay, so this is chapter 5, chapter 5 Bivariate Analysis. So under this chapter, we're going to look at what these are the learning objectives. So we first want to look at how to draw a scatter plot for a set of ordered pairs, and then compute the correlation coefficient, compute the equation for the regression line, and then compute the coefficient of determination, and lastly to make predictions. So basically ini adalah kelima objektif yang kita nak capai dalam chapter 5 lah. So it's very straightforward, tak ada nak pusing-pusing kat mana. So it's easy for you to, kalau ikutkan senang lah untuk kita follow through. So saya can go through one by one, and we go through one by one the concept under these topics. So if you look through the introduction here, it says here, okay, correlation analysis. What is correlation analysis all about? Kita tengok dulu yang ni. Okay, for introduction, it says here, okay, correlation is a statistical method to use to determine whether a linear relationship between variable exists. So, bila kita katakan correlation analysis, so correlation analysis ni kita hanya melihat sama ada sekiranya kita ada dua pemboleh ubah. So, in this case, kita consider hanya dua pemboleh ubah saja. Sebab tu dia punya tajuk chapter ni adalah Bivariate Analysis. So when we talk about bivariate analysis, it only deals with only two variables. Okay, kita hanya melibatkan dua pemboleh ubah sahaja. So when we talk about relationship, when we talk about causal relationship, is always referring to only two variable, which means that one is the independent variable and the other one is the dependent variables. Okay, itu yang berlaku. So this is the situation. Alright, so when we talk about correlation analysis, it is a statistical method to identify whether two variable is associated with one another or not. Dengan kata lain, kita nak tengok sama ada adakah dua pemboleh ubah itu mempunyai perkaitan ataupun tidak. Let's say, katakan kita ada dua pemboleh ubah. Suppose we have student's gender and test score. Tapi student gender tak boleh lah, sebab student gender adalah male and female. Okay, so in this situation, bila katakan correlation is always referring to the parametric test. So kita nak tengok yang parametric saja. So bila parametric, kita hanya boleh melibatkan pemboleh ubah yang bersifat numerical, kuantitatif. So that means if you have one is categorical, the other one is quantitative, kita tak boleh buat, kita tak masuk dalam syllabus ni. Yang tu tak masuk dalam syllabus. Yang tu kita boleh buat dengan menggunakan kaedah yang dipanggil sebagai Spearman rank correlation. Tapi yang tu tak ada dalam kita punya syllabus. So what we are looking here right now is only on Pearson product moment correlation coefficient, whereby kita hanya deal untuk melihat perkaitan antara dua pemboleh ubah yang bersifat numerik. Contohnya, katakan saya ada test score bahasa Inggeris dan juga test score mathematics dalam bahasa Inggeris. Okay, so kita nak tengok ada tak perkaitan bagi pelajar yang mempunyai skor matematik yang tinggi, adakah dia juga mempunyai skor yang tinggi dalam bahasa Inggeris. Itu kita katakan dalam bentuk dua nilai yang kuantitatif. So skor dalam matematik adalah kuantitatif, skor dalam bahasa Inggeris juga adalah kuantitatif. Okay, so in this situation kita nak lihat sama ada pemboleh ubah dua-dua ni ada tak perkaitan. Okay, ada tak association? Is it saying that for those yang mempunyai markah tinggi bagi English, bahasa Inggeris, juga akan mempunyai markah yang tinggi bagi mathematics. So kalau ianya mempunyai perkaitan, maka benda tu adalah benar lah. So dia katakan, okay, pelajar yang mempunyai markah tinggi untuk English adalah berkait dengan pelajar itu juga akan mempunyai markah tinggi dalam mathematics. Okay, itu dari segi correlation. So correlation is only looking at the association, only looking at the linear relationship, whether is there exists a relationship or not between the two variables. Okay. Meanwhile, for regression is a statistical method used to describe the nature of the relationship between the variable that is positive or negative, linear or non-linear. So basically, regression is go beyond the correlation. Of course, in correlation analysis itself, kita boleh tahu sama ada dia linear ataupun non-linear. Adakah dia positif ataupun negatif. But in term of regression, it goes beyond that. Not only they are looking at the positive, negative, linear or non-linear, it's also looking at the nature whether it affect one another or not. Adakah sesuatu pemboleh ubah itu mempengaruhi pemboleh ubah yang satu lagi. So this is where it exists the term dependent and independent variable. Okay, dalam regression analysis lah akan wujudnya terma yang digunakan sama ada kiranya adalah pemboleh ubah bersandar ataupun pemboleh ubah tidak bersandar. Independent or dependent variables. So meaning to say here, dalam korelasi, dalam correlation, kita hanya melihat perkaitan, wujud ataupun tidak. Tetapi dalam regresi, kita lihat lebih daripada itu. Instead of just looking dia punya perkaitan, hanya lihat pada perkaitan sahaja. Regression, dia go beyond that. So, go beyond that maksudnya apa? Maksud, dia bukan saja melihat saja perkaitan sahaja, tapi dilihat sama ada tak perkaitan itu, satu pemboleh ubah mempengaruhi satu lagi ataupun tidak. Itu yang kita lihat dalam regression. Sebagai contoh, katakan kita ada dua variable. Test score dengan amount of revision ataupun hours spent for revision. Okay, kita ada dua pemboleh ubah. So, katakan kita ada test score dengan hours done for revision. Okay, revision hours. So, ada tak perkaitan? Secara dasarnya kita tahu bahawa okey, kalau katakan kita review hours review tu lebih tinggi, maka kita akan dapat markah yang lebih tinggi. Itu secara logik kan. Okey, itu secara logik kita tahu bahawa secara logiknya, secara umumnya bahawa kalau katakan kita meluangkan masa lebih banyak untuk kita buat revision, maka kita akan dapat markah yang lebih baik. Okey, so that is secara logik perkaitan yang wujud itu korelasi. Tetapi kalau katakan kita go beyond that, menyatakan bahawa bilangan jam yang kita spend, bilangan jam yang kita spend untuk buat revision mempengaruhi kita punya markah dalam sesuatu peperiksaan. Yang tu dipanggil sebagai regression. Kita katakan okay, amount of hours spent for revision influence the test score of a student. Nampak dia berkata influence kan tu. So that's why dalam statistik kadang-kadang kita panggilkan korelasi ni, correlation ni, kita just say that it is a linear relationship. But for regression we say that it is a linear causal relationship. Dia ada perkataan causal tu, maksudnya dia mempengaruhi. Okay, dia mempengaruhi yang satu lagi. Itulah perbezaan yang ketara antara correlation analysis and regression analysis. Correlation analysis hanya melihat kepada perkaitan. Tetapi regression analysis melihat lebih daripada itu. Instead of just lihat pada perkaitan, dia melihat juga pada impact. Adakah sesuatu variable X mempengaruhi variable Y ataupun tidak. Boleh faham Okay, any question so far? Is it clear? Clear? Okay. So the purpose of this chapter to answer this question statistically. So the first one is to answer, are two or more variable related? Adakah dua ataupun lebih pemboleh ubah berkait atau ada relationship? Right? Ada hubungan. If so, katakan ya. What is the strength and direction of the relationship? Apakah kekuatan dan juga dia punya arah hubungan tersebut? Adakah perkaitan dia kuat, lemah ataupun moderate? Ataupun dari segi dia punya arah, adakah dia bersifat positif ataupun negatif? Okay, nanti kita tengok apa makna positif, apa makna negatif. And then what type of relationship exists? Is it a linear relationship? Is it a quadratic relationship? And so on. And of course, dalam kita punya perbincangan untuk kita punya syllabus, kita hanya lihat untuk yang linear relationship sahaja. Okay. And then what kind of prediction can be made from the relationship? Apakah kaedah telahan ataupun forecasting prediction yang kita boleh buat daripada kita punya perkaitan yang kita dapati tadi. Okay, itu adalah persoalan yang kita nak jawab dalam topik ni. Okay, kalau kita nak lakukan nak tengok dari segi dia punya content tu, itulah content yang kita nak lihat. Okay. So, to answer this question, so macam mana kita nak jawab persoalan ni? Okay, how are we going to answer these questions? Okay, the first one it says here, to answer this question, are two or more variables related? Okay, adakah dua ataupun lebih variable related? So, the answer is that a relationship can be determined by either through graphical display, such as scatter diagram, or measures like correlation. Okay, so in this case, kalau kita nak lihat sama ada adakah dua ataupun lebih variables, boleh ubah itu berkait ataupun tidak, mempunyai linear relationship ataupun tidak, kita boleh lihat melalui scatter diagram daripada plot serakan. Ataupun kita boleh juga menggunakan nilai numerik yang menggambarkan perkaitan antara dua formula ubah yang dipanggil sebagai measures of correlation. Okay, measures of correlation ataupun Pearson product moment of correlation. Okay, boleh juga so kita gunakan korelasi. Okay, itu untuk menjawab persoalan yang pertama. Untuk persoalan yang kedua, if so, kalau ya, what is the strength of the relationship? So, macam mana kita nak tahu pula dia punya strength of the relationship? Macam mana kita nak tengok dia punya arah? Adakah dia bersifat positif ataupun negatif? Kalau bersifat positif tu macam mana? Kalau bersifat negatif tu pula macam mana? Okay, this is where we are answering that statistician use the correlation coefficient. We use the correlation coefficient, and of course, by using the graphical display also you can approximately determine the strength and also the relation, the direction. Okay, daripada graf kita boleh nampak secara kasar, dan untuk lebih jelas kita boleh menggunakan koefisien korelasi. Okay, coefficient correlation. So, a coefficient correlation is a numerical measure to determine whether two or more variables are related and to determine the strength of the relationship between or among the variables. So, first kita tengok sama ada adakah dia related ataupun tidak. And of course, bila tentukan sama ada related ataupun tidak, we have to do the testing. But in our case here, we are going to do that, but not in term of a manual calculation. Kita hanya akan buat melalui output process. We can also determine the strength, and not only the strength, we can also determine the direction, whether is it positive or negative. Apa yang dimaksudkan dengan direction positif dengan negatif ni? What it means by positive correlation and negative correlation? When we say that it is having a positive linear relationship, positive means that both variables move in the same direction. Okay, meaning to say that if one value of x is high, the value of y also high. Itu maksudnya dia positif, dia dalam arah yang sama. Satu tinggi, yang satu lagi pun mesti tinggi juga. If it is a negative relationship, that means it is the other way around. Maksudnya one is high, the other one is low. Okay, so one is high, the other one is low. So this can also be seen from the graphical display. Boleh juga dilihat daripada graphical display, daripada gambar aja. So contohnya kalau katakan you ada graphical display, saya tak ada saya punya pen pula So let's say you have a graphical display and you display, and then you see that the graph is something like this. Okay, you see that the point here, is it moving upward or downward? Moving upward kan? So, moving upward maksudnya dia punya slope adalah positif. So, this is what it means by positive correlation, because a lower value of x will give you a lower value of y. Let's say this one is x. So, this is x and this is y. Okay, so kalau kita boleh lukiskan garis, let's say we have a point over here, we can draw a straight line across this. So you can see that the line is positively sloped. It is increasing. So ini yang dikatakan sebagai positive relationship. Okay. Meanwhile, kalau negatif dia terbalik lah. Alright. So that is in term of the strength. And from the scatter diagram also we can determine the strength by looking at the scatter point. By looking at the point that is scattered on a straight line or a clusters, whether the cluster is it small or is it big. Okay, kalau macam ni dia dekat dengan satu sama lain, maka kita katakan dia lebih kurang dalam bentuk moderate lah ataupun moderate to strong. Tapi kalau dia jauh-jauh ada satu sama lain, okay, dia tak cluster together, maka kita katakan it is very weak. Okay, so that is in term of the strength. Alright. And then the third one, how to answer the question, what type of relationship exists? So in this case, there are two types of relationship, whether it is simple and multiple. In a simple relationship, there are only two variables, an independent variable, predictor, and a dependent variable, the response variable. In multiple regression or multiple relationship, there are two or more independent variables that are used to predict one dependent variable. So this is in general. Kita tengok yang surface ya, kita tak tengok yang advanced punya type of relationship. We are not going to look into the multivariate relationship. We are not going to look into a logistic relationship. No. Kita hanya lihat yang simple one, that is simple regression ataupun multiple regression. However, dalam kita punya perbincangan untuk syllabus kita hanya lihat yang simple regression sahaja. Meaning to say, we are only dealing with one independent variable and one dependent variable. Apa pula independent dengan dependent variable ni? So, independent variable ni adalah pemboleh ubah yang diketahui nilainya. It is given values. It is known values. Benda yang kita tahu. Dependent variable pula adalah sesuatu yang kita perlu terbitkan daripada independent variable. Dia tidak diketahui. Hanya boleh diperolehi apabila kita tahu nilai independent variable. Okay. So, dependent variable will be the one that we want to predict, the one that we want to forecast ataupun approximate based on the regression equation. So, that is the dependent variable. So, we call this dependent variable because the value or the variation in the dependent variable depends on the variation in the independent variable. If the relationship exists. Kalau sekiranya dia punya perkaitan wujud, maka dependent variable ni akan bergantung, variasi dalam dependent variable akan bergantung kepada variasi di dalam independent variable. Dengan syarat terdapatnya perkaitan antara kedua-dua pemboleh ubah. Kalau kedua-dua pemboleh ubah tidak ada perkaitan, there's no point untuk kita dapatkan dia punya prediction. Okay, sebab dia tak wujud, prediction dia tak tepat. Okay, misleading. Okay, and then what kind of prediction can be made from the relationship? So prediction are made daily in all areas. Example include weather forecasting. So this is the kind of prediction yang kita buat. So weather forecasting, stock market analysis, sales prediction, crop prediction, gasoline price prediction. So all this kind of prediction can be made through regression. Okay. Some prediction are more accurate than others. So this depends on the nature of data. And some due to the strength of the relationship. And that is, the stronger the relationship is between the variable, the more accurate the prediction is. Maksudnya kalau perkaitan tu adalah kuat, maka dia punya prediction tu akan lebih tepat. Berbanding dengan pemboleh ubah yang mempunyai perkaitan yang lemah, maka kita punya prediction juga adalah tak berapa accurate, tak berapa tepat. Okay, so that is the situation. Okay, next we're going to look at what it means by scatter plot. So a scatter plot is just simply a graph of ordered pairs x and y, where x here referring to the independent variable data ataupun values, and y referring to the dependent variable values or data. Alright. of numbers consisting the independent variable X and the dependent variable Y. So, dia adalah dalam bentuk pairing. Okay, and the scatter plot is, in this case, we are dealing with a two-dimensional scatter plot whereby kita hanya ada dua paksi sahaja, iaitu paksi X dan paksi Y, di mana paksi X mewakili independent variable, meanwhile paksi Y, the Y axis referring to the dependent variables. Okay. Okay, in correlation, it is not a must for you to identify the dependent and the independent variable, because in correlation analysis there is no independent or dependent variable. So that means you can just straight away run the correlation analysis and see whether they are associated or not between the two variables, because we are only interested in the relationship. But for regression analysis, you have to identify which one is the independent variable and which one is the dependent variable. Okay. So, dalam situasi ini, walaupun kita tak perlu nak tentukan yang mana satu independent ataupun dependent variable dalam correlation analysis, tapi disebabkan dalam soalan exam, data yang sama digunakan untuk korelasi dan juga regresi, maka kita perlu tentukan dia punya independent dengan dependent variable di awal. Okey, di awal so kena tentukan juga. Sebab apa? Sebab kita sambungkan perbincangan korelasi dengan korelasi ni, dia ada sambungan dia, kesinambungan dia. So that means you have to do to find the independent and dependent variable from the beginning. You start answering the questions. Okay, start answering the problem. Okay. Okay, the independent and dependent variable can be plotted on a graph called scatter plot. The independent variable is plotted, X is plotted on the horizontal axis, and the dependent variable is plotted on the vertical axis. The scatter plot is a visual way to describe the nature of the relationship between the independent and dependent variable. So, dalam keadaan sini, scatter plot ni adalah memberikan satu gambaran visual untuk anda menentukan, untuk anda melihat sama ada terdapat berkaitan antara dua pemberi ubah tersebut ataupun tidak. Okay, secara kasar. So, this is the preliminary exploration of your data set. Okay, you punya exploration awal tentang you punya data set. So, you boleh tengoklah macam mana dia punya perkaitan. The scale of the variable can be different, and the coordinates of the axis are determined by the smallest and the largest value in the variables. Okay, dia tentukan itu. So, suppose that you have this thing, you have students, you have 6 students, you have hours of study, and you have the mark that the student received in an exam. So, the two variables for this study are the independent variable, also known as the predictors or exogenous variable, and the dependent variable, also known as the response or endogenous variable. Okay, these are the names used other than independent and dependent variables. Okay, the independent variable is the variable in the regression that can be controlled or manipulated. Okay, so in this case, sebab independent variable ni is a non-value, so you can control the value and also you can also manipulate the value, change the value and predict what is the value of Y. Okay, itu adalah nature of the independent variable. Meanwhile, the dependent variable you cannot control, you cannot manipulate, because it is a terbitan. So it is occur due to the value of X. Okay, due to the value of the independent variable. So whatever the value for the independent variable, that is the value for the dependent variable. So the dependent variable Y cannot be manipulated, cannot be controlled, because it depends on the value of the independent variable. Okay, that is the situation. If, for example, you have example 5.1 here, so you have the car rental in 1,000 companies and revenue in billions are shown below based on the given data. Plot the scatter plot. Okay, so plot the scatter plot. So remember, the scatter plot is just simply the dot plot on a scatter graph. Okay. in a two-way tab in a two-dimensional graph. Okay, so here you have company, you have the 6 company A, B, C, D, E, and then you have the cars, number of cars they rented. Okay, the number of cars they give for rental, the rental, and then the revenue that they receive for the rental cars. So for example, company A have 63 rental cars, and then the revenue that they receive is 7 billions. Okay, and then for company B, they have 29 car rentals, and then the revenue that they receive is 3.9 billions, and so on. Okay, so you want to display this into a scatter plot. So in this situation, you have the pair of data. So what are the pair of data here? The X and Y. So this will be the X, and cost will be the X, and revenue will be the Y. So as a logic, you know that the more number of cars that you have, the higher the revenue. So cost will be the independent variable, and the revenue will be the dependent variable. So the pairing of X and Y over here, so it will be something like this. So this is the pair of X and Y. Yang you nak kena masukkan dalam your punya graph. Okay, so you have the first one is 63 and 7. And then the second one you have is 2.29 and 3.9. Okay, so that is the first one, and then the second one. Okay, so you have 29 and 39, something like that. And then the third one, you have the pair of 20.8, 20.8 and 2.1. Okay, and so on. So, and then you dapat dah lagi. Okay, so that are the pairing. So, in this case, you need to find the pair over here. So, you have to come up with a scatter plot. So, how to do that? You have the x-axis referring to your x variable, that is cars in 1000, and then you have the y-axis referring to your revenues. So you plot the graph, and then you have the scale over here respective to the variables that you are interested in. So in this case, untuk cars you have the lowest is 8.5, and then the highest is 63. So you have the value to be from 8.5 until 63 over here. Okay. And then for the revenue, it goes from 1.4 until 7. So you have the lowest is 1.4 kat bawah ni. So and then goes to 7.75. So you locate the first value is 63.7. So which one is the 63.7? So kita ada 63.7. So there you have 63, and then you have 7 over here. So this will be the 63.7. Okay, tak buat sini. First saya gunakan draw lah. Okay, so this will be the 63.7, the first one. So this will be the first value. Okay, saya padam. Okay, so this will be the first value. So and then you have 29.39. Mana 29? So 29 dekat sini, 39 dekat 29 dekat, okay, somewhere here. This is 29, and then you have 3.9, so somewhere here. So this will be the second one. Okay, kalau tengok yang the second one, so this will be the second one. Okay, so you draw all these value, you plot all these value in the diagram, so you have the scatter plot. So this is the scatter plot, and of course, remember that the scatter plot, you must have several items in there. So you must have the labels correctly. So you have the labels for the X and Y. And then you have the title saying that this is scatter plot of car rental companies and revenue. And then you have the plot itself. Okay, that is the component of a scatter plot. And from the scatter plot itself, you can also identify the relationship. Okay, whether is there exists a relationship or not. Okay, so kat sini ada relationship ke tak? Okay, if you look through this one, you can see that the movement of the data is upward, right? So semakin rendah, nilai yang rendah associated with the lower value, and nilai yang tinggi associated with a higher value in Y. So you can see that there is a positive relationship. Kenapa positif? Low with low, high with high. So that is positive. Kalau low with high, high with low, then it is negative relationship. So in this case, this is a positive relationship. So what about the strength? Is it strong relationship? Yes, it is strong relationship because you can see that the value is just a cluster next to a straight line. So dia dekat, so cluster dia kecil. Okay, cluster dia kecil. So berbanding kalau cluster yang besar, dia akan jadi yang weak lah. Okay. So this is the relationship. So kalau you tengok kat sini, bagaimana kita nak membincangkan ni? So how are we going to interpret this information? So what can be said regarding the above plot? Apa yang boleh kita dapatkan daripada plot tersebut? So this is how you explain. This is how you elaborate your graph. Okay. So figure 5.1 shows a scatter plot of revenue realized against the number of cars rented. Based on the plot, it indicates that there exists an upward trend such that a lower number of cars rented is associated with a lower value of revenue, whilst a higher number of cars rented is associated with the higher value of revenue. In other words, there exists a direct linear relationship between the number of cars and revenue. So direct linear relationship is another term used to replace the term positive linear relationship. So kita boleh gunakan positive linear relationship ataupun direct linear relationship. Kalau negatif, kita boleh tukarkan dia sebagai indirect. Okay, so itu adalah kaedah kita membuat penerangan berkenaan dengan graf yang kita perolehi. So how you interpret a single line interpret, one sentence interpretation. So you can just say that there is a positive linear relationship between the number of cars rented by rental companies and revenues. Okay, nampak So that is the interpretation. Okay, another example you can see that here is the second example where you have a negative relationship. So it says here, construct a scatter plot for a data obtained in a study on number of absences and the final grades of 7 randomly selected students from a statistic class. The data are shown below. So yang ni dia tengok, okay, berapa banyak absence pelajar tersebut, berapa banyak pelajar tersebut ponteng kelas dan berapakah markah yang dia dapat. Okay. So secara logik ni kita katakan apa? Kalau katakan pelajar tu banyak tinggal kelas, maka dia akan dapat markah yang lebih rendah. So secara dasarnya, secara logik ni kita dapat lihat berkaitan antara absenteeism dengan final marks ataupun markah adalah negative relationship, di mana higher value of absenteeism, lagi banyak dia ponteng kelas, makin rendahlah markah yang dia perolehi. Okay, similarly yang ni boleh juga diguna pakai dalam konsep kita punya pekerjaan. Okay, contohnya absenteeism dengan, kita nak compare absenteeism rate dengan performance. Do absenteeism have any impact on the performance of any employee? Adakah bilangan kehadiran ataupun kehadiran pekerja mempengaruhi, bilangan kehadiran pekerja mempengaruhi performance dia? kemajuan dia dalam sesuatu organisasi. Okay, productivity dia dalam satu organisasi. So kita boleh lihat yang tu. So biasanya secara logik, kalau katakan dia banyak ponteng, maka dia punya productivity adalah rendah. Okay, itu secara logik kan. So that is the relationship. So this is what being explain dalam graph yang kita perolehi kat depan tu So in your screen you can see that the movement of the data set is downward trend dia menurun. So kalau you perhatikan di sini dia menurun kan. Okay, dia menurun ke bawah. So there is a negative relationship. Okay. So again, how are you going to explain? So can just say that figure 5.2 sama macam tadi. Cuba perbezaan kat sini. Figure 5.2 shows a scatter plot of final grade received against the number of absences of a student. Based on the plot, it indicates that there exists a downward trend such that a lower number of absences is associated with a higher grade received. Okay, kalau katakan yang ni untuk grade, kalau dia kurang absent, maka markah dia akan lebih tinggi. Kalau dia banyak absent, maka dia akan lebih rendah. Okay, so in other words, there exists an indirect or inverse linear relationship between the number of absences of a student and the final grade he or she received. So interpretation dia, there is a negative linear relationship between number of absences and the final grade. Okay. Kalau saya nakkan lebih tepat, saya boleh katakan there is a strong negative linear relationship. Kenapa saya boleh katakan strong kat sini? Sebab kalau you perhatikan dalam graf ni, dia adalah dalam bentuk garis lurus. Kalau kita tengokkan titik-titik ni, kalau kita lukiskan satu garis lurus di tengah ni, dia menghampiri satu garis lurus. Okay, maka semakin dekat dia menghampiri pada satu garis lurus, maka semakin kuatlah dia punya perkaitan. Okay, that is the situation. Okay, and then untuk yang ketiga ni, this is an example of there is no relationship. Okay, kenapa no relationship? Kita tidak boleh lihat sama ada dia menaik ataupun menurun sebabkan ada LIS kat situ So secara dasar dia nampak macam menaik, tapi dia adalah lebih scattered. So you can just say that there is no conclusion can be drawn. So there is no linear relationship between age and wealth. Okay, ini satu lagi contoh untuk melihat relationship So kita tengok situ. So for those yang tengok soalan dia, so this is the question. Okay, a researcher wishes to see if there is a relationship between the age of the wealthiest people in the world and the net worth. A random sample of 10% was selected from the Forbes list of the 400 richest people for the recent year. The data are shown. So draw a scatter plot for the data. So dia bagi dia punya umur dan juga dia punya net worth. Okay, dari sini kita draw dia punya graph, and then berdasarkan graph yang kita dapat, kita boleh buat dia punya conclusion. Okay, so that is in term of scatter plot. Okay, ada soalan tak so far? Boleh Okay, that is scatter plot. So let's see the next one. Okay, next kita masuk pada pula correlation. So once you have made your preliminary exploration through the scatter plot, the next thing is to support your views on the scatter plot, support your whatever that you have found from the scatter plot by a numerical measures. Okay, and one of the ways is by using the linear correlation coefficient, Pearson product moment correlation coefficient, or we just make it a short form of Pearson product moment correlation coefficient ataupun Pearson product moment correlation. Okay, so some people the short form is PPMCC ataupun PPMC, sama je And for this situation, the value of the Pearson product moment correlation coefficient, and normally we denote this as R, so kita gunakan huruf R kat sini So we denote as R So we normally use the term the value R to represent the linear correlation coefficient using Pearson product moment correlation coefficient. So we denote it as R. Okay. And the R value here goes between -1 and 1 towards the extreme. So inclusive of -1 and +1. If the value is equal to -1, that means it has a perfect negative linear relationship. If the value is equal to +1, that means it has a perfect positive linear relationship. Okay. The moment the value of R move away from the two extreme, -1 and 1, so the weaker the relationship will be. And the closer the value to 0 from both sides, the weaker the relationship. Okay. Dengan kata lain kat sini, kalau nilai itu menghampiri nilai kosong, maka dia punya kekuatan semakin berkurangan. Kalau dia menghampiri the two extreme, ke positif 1 ataupun negatif 1, maka kekuatan dia semakin meningkat. Okey? Faham ya? Okey, dan nilai korelasi ini adalah antara negatif 1 dan 1. So the negative sign will give you the direction, whether is it a positive relationship or negative relationship. So the sign positive and negative akan menentukan sama ada dia mempunyai direct relationship ataupun indirect relationship. Okay, that is the use of the sign, whether it is a negative value or a positive value. The strength of the relationship is basically based on the values itself. Okay, values itu sendiri, value R itu sendiri, tanpa melibatkan nilai negatif dan positif itu, tanpa melibatkan sign positif dan negatif. So that means if you have, let's say you have the value of R to be okay, suppose you have R equal to 6 dengan R equal to negative 0.6 0.6 dengan negative 0.6 Okay, so if you have this value R equal to 0.6 and negative 0.6, in terms of its strength, both of these have the same strength. Kedua-duanya mempunyai kekuatan yang sama, tetapi mempunyai arah yang berbeza. Kekuatan sama tapi arah berbeza, sebab satu positif, satu lagi negatif. So kena faham yang tu ya. So negatif positif tu, kekuatan tu besar atau kecil tidak bergantung pada nilai tu kecil ataupun besar. Kalau dari segi sign tapi kalau katakan kekuatan tu hanya melihat dia punya nilai sahaja. So sign tu hanya menentukan dia punya arah, sama ada positif ataupun negatif relationship. Okay. Okay, this is the formula that can be used to calculate the Pearson product moment correlation coefficients. So you boleh dapatkan formula ni, boleh hafal ataupun boleh cari sendirilah. So this is the formula given. So you boleh tengok dekat final exam tu dia bagi ya formula ni. So you don't have to worry about the formula. They will give you the second one also. R equal to SXY, SSX, SYY. And what does this mean? So SXY tu refer yang atas ni. So summation of XY minus summation of X, summation of Y divided by N. Manakala SXX adalah X square minus sum of square and this one. And then this one will be sum of IY. Okay. So this is given at the bottom there. Okay, where N here refer to the number of pairs. So N refer to number of pairs. So kalau contoh yang ni, okay, berapa nilai N dia? Dia ada berapa pair? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you have 10 pairs. So in this case, for this situation, N is equal to 10. Okay, so N refer kepada the number of pairs. So this is the formula. So you have the rounding rule over there. Okay, dapat So that is the formula that for calculate the correlation value. Okay, this is an example on how you can calculate the correlation value manually. Okay, secara manual you boleh dapatkan. So you have the company A. Okay, company A bukanlah dia punya data, bukan variable. Company A is just the indicator. So you have 6 company over there, and then you have the cars that will be the data. So you have X variable and Y variable. So in this case, you ada data ni. So first thing that you need to find is XX. So XX is simply the multiplication of X ataupun the square of X value. Which means that in this question, you square 63, you get 3969. Okay. Okay, you get 3969. Okay, and then 29 square, you dapat 841 and so on. YY pula, the column for YY referring to the square of the revenue. That is the Y variable. So 7 squared, you get 49. 3.9 squared, you get 15.21 dan seterusnya lah. And then the last one will be the multiplication of the X and Y. So that means 441 is equal to 63 multiply with 7. Okey, untuk dapatkan 441, you darabkan 63 dan darab dengan 7. So, you dapatlah 441. So, once you have all this value, you calculate the sum for each of the column. So, you calculate the sum of X, sum of Y, sum of XX, sum of XY, sum of YY. So, this is what you have at the bottom. Okay, you dapat yang bawah ni. Okay, you dapat yang bawah ni. So, all these summation value. So, once you have the summation value, then you can calculate the sum of XX, sum of YY, dan sum of XY. So, this is given by the formula. You calculate the values, you get 149.4274 for sum of XX, sum of XY. And for sum of XX, you get 1916.853. And sum of YY, you get 22.388. Okay. And finally, you substitute the value into the equations. And you find that the value of R is equal to 0.982. So 0.982 ni positive ke negative? Positive, right? So is it close to 0 or close to 1? So it is closer to 1, isn't it? So very close to 1. So that means the relationship is very strong. Sebab dia hampir dengan hujung kiri dan kanan. So tapi yang ni dia hampir dengan positif 1. Sangat hampir dengan positif 1. Maka kekuatannya semakin meningkat. So we can say that there exists a strong positive linear relationship. Okay, between the two variables, right? So what can you explain from the observed measures? So you can say that based on the calculated measures obtained, we found that the correlation R value is positive. Okay, nilai dia positive. Does this indicate that the relationship is a positive linear relationship? Okay, or a direct linear relationship such that a higher value of cars rented is associated with a higher annual revenue. Okay. In addition, the value obtained is close to the value of 1 that indicates a strong or a very strong relationship between the two variables. Okay, so this is a clear explanation on the value obtained. So dia dah ada dekat situ dia punya strength, dia ada dia punya direction. Okay. Okay, to put it in one words, to put it the explanation tadi dalam satu satu statement, you can just say that to interpret there is a strong positive linear relationship between the number of cars rented by the car rental agency and its annual revenue. Okay, and its annual revenue. So that is how you interpret the relationship. So dia ada dua kat situ. So satu adalah dia punya, kalau you perhatikan kat sini, satu dia ada dia punya strength, that is strong. Okay, saya nak tulis ni ya. Saya draw sini. Okay, satu dia ada strong. Okay, dia punya strength, and then satu lagi dia ada dia punya direction. Okay, positive. So strong is will be the strength. Kalau nak tuliskan very strong pun boleh kat, sebab memang very close to 1. Tapi kalau jadi satu, dia akan jadi perfect positive linear relationship. So you have the positive linear relationship, that is the direction. Okay, so that is for correlation. Any questions so far? There. Okay, regression pula. So in this situation, regression is like we want to draw a line to represent the data. Okay, so we want to draw a line, the regression equation line. So all this line is called the regression equation line. So in regression analysis, using the method, what we call as the method of least square, we are trying to find the best fit line that give you the minimum error, the minimum least square. Okay, least square errors. So in this case, all these three line dalam gambar darjah ni adalah dipanggil sebagai regression equation line. However, there is one line that is what we call as the best linear unbiased estimate lines. Okay, so the best linear unbiased line. So using the blue methods, method of least square. Okay, kita gunakan, kita panggil sebagai blue, method of best linear unbiased estimate, that is for blue. So we want to estimate the best line to predict the direction or the predict the relationship between the two variable x and y. Okay, so in this situation kita nak carikan line yang paling bagus, yang paling baik, right? So this is what we call as the regression analysis. So basically in regression analysis, we are trying to fit the best line to the data. Okay, kita cuba untuk melakarkan garis, mendapatkan garis lurus yang, garis linear yang paling accurate, paling baik untuk menggambarkan data yang kita ada. Okay, so that is the situation. And the method that we are using here is called the method of least square ataupun least square method. Okay, in general, you can just simply write the equation of regression line as y equal to a plus bx. Okay, you can just write it in the form of y equal to a plus bx, whereby in this situation y is the dependent variable, a is the constant of y-intercept, and b will be the slope. Okay, the slope of the coefficient. Okay, the coefficient slope, slope for the variable x, the slope coefficient for variable x. Okay, so this is the regression equation. So in order to find the regression equation line, the best regression equation line, using the least square methods, you have to estimate the value of b and the value of a. Barulah you akan dapat dia punya regression line, equation. So in this case, you have to estimate the value of b by using the formula sxy and sxx. So yang ni sama macam tadi kita buat. Okay, so tadi kita dah ada kan sxx dengan sxy kalau dalam contoh tadi. Okay, kita ada kat sini. So sxy, sxx. So these are the value yang kita perlu carikan. So we already have the value and you substitute in the formula. So you will get the value of b and use the value of b obtained to get the value of y. The value of a. Okay, the value of a is simply the mean or the average value of y minus the b that you have calculated earlier, multiply with the average value of x. Okay, kita akan tengok macam mana kita nak kira benda ni semua. So let's see one example here. So this is the steps in order to find the regression equation. Alamak, terlari pula ni. So nanti kena betulkan balik. Okay, step in finding the regression equation line using the least square method of least square. Step 1 is write the general regression equation. So that means you write down the general form first, y equal to a plus bx. The second step is to estimate the value of b using the formula sxy divided by sxx. And then once you have the value of b, step 3 to estimate the value of a using the formula a equal to y hat minus b, y bar minus b bar, bx bar. And then lastly, once you have the value of b and a, you rewrite the equation in step 1, but right now replacing the value of a and b by the value that you have obtained from step 2 and step 3. Okay, saya ulang. Step yang pertama, kita tuliskan secara dia punya equation. Okay, dia punya persamaan, iaitu y sama dengan a tambah bx. Langkah yang kedua adalah kita anggarkan nilai b menggunakan formula sxy dibahagi dengan sxx. So, once kita dah dapatkan nilai b, kita dah estimate nilai b, step yang ketiga adalah kita estimate nilai a pula dengan menggunakan formula a sama juga dengan y bar, iaitu average y, mean y, tolak dengan b darabkan dengan average x. So, b yang kita dapatkan dalam step 2. Dan akhir sekali, step yang keempat, kita tulis semula regression equation yang kita tulis dalam step 1. Tetapi sekarang kita gantikan nilai a dan b dengan nilai yang kita perolehi daripada step 2 dan step 3. So, that is the process of finding the regression equation. So, kita gunakan formula yang sama. So, kalau ini kita tak nak guna formula, kita just nak tengok dari segi output SPSS macam mana nak baca. So, same data set untuk yang car rental tadi. Okay, the above data has been analyzed using SPSS and result are provided below. So, this is the result. So, first dia bagi result dia punya scatter plot. So, sama macam yang kita lukis tadi kan. So, based on the scatter plot itself, you can see that there exists a strong positive linear relationship. And then the model summary give you the R value and the R squared value. Okay. So, R value tadi kita kira 0.982. Betul Kalau kita tengok balik dekat yang asal tadi, kita kira tadi nilai R. Mana nilai R kita? Okay, kita akan dapat 0.982 kan? So, this is also display in the value of R tadi Okay, this is also shown in the table tadi Saya kena gerakkan dia slow-slow sebab nanti dia dekat recording dia tak nampak pula. Okay, so you dapat the model summary is this one So you can see that model 1, so R is the correlation. And R square ni nanti kita akan sentuh apa itu R square. Okay, adjusted R square ni tak perlu tahu sangat. Tapi just an adjusted of the R square, just tengok dia punya impact sahaja. And then you have the standard error of the estimate. And then the second one you have the coefficient. Okay, coefficient ni lah adalah untuk kita bina kita punya regression equation. Okay, macam mana kita nak baca coefficient? Okay, so apa yang kita pentingkan kat sini apabila kita nak tuliskan kita punya regression equation, kita tengok dekat bahagian yang unstandardized coefficient. Tengok bahagian ni So look at this area. Okay. And then kalau katakan kita nak tengok adakah perkaitan yang kita ada tadi, perkaitan tadi antara dua pemboleh iaitu number of car rented dengan revenue, are they really affect one another? Are the relationship really statistically valid? You just look at the significant value over here and say less than 0.05. So that means the relationship is a valid relationship. Okay, it's a statistically significant relationship. Okay, we call this statistically significant relationship. Okay, how do you write the equation? So macam mana kita dapatkan regression equation? Okay, looking at the unstandardized coefficient here, the B value here refer to the coefficient A and B. Okay, the first row adalah constant. So, constant value B, constant value ni adalah nilai A. Meanwhile, for the second row, you have car and you have the B value to be 0.106. So, this is the value for B. Okay, ini adalah value untuk A. Okay, this is for A. And this is for B. Okay, you ada A dengan B. So that means kalau katakan you nak tuliskan jawapan dia, you kena ada kat sini. So kita tahulah sini nilai A dia 0.396 dan nilai B adalah 0.106. And then you ada dia punya standard error. And then you have the beta value over here. Okay. Okay. So these are the questions asked in the related to the output. So the first one dia katakan identify the independent and dependent variable. So macam mana kita tahu yang mana satu independent, yang mana satu dependent variable? Okay, yang ada dalam model ni, so ni apa yang ada dalam model ni, ini adalah dia punya independent variable. So in this situation, car is the independent variable. Constant ni jangan tengok, so constant ni adalah yang nilai A tu. Constant ni adalah A. Okay, constant value. So kalau car dah independent variable, that means revenue will be the dependent variables. And then the second question asks you, by referring to the scatter diagram, describe the relationship between the two variables. So macam mana nak tahu dia punya two variable ni? So based on the scatter diagram, there exists an upward trend kan? Nampak upward trend kat situ. So that means the relationship is positive. So is it a strong positive relationship or a weak positive relationship? So kalau tengok kat sini, it is a strong positive relationship because the value, the point is clustered smaller in a straight line. The cluster is small, very small towards a straight line. So that means you can say that there exists a very strong linear relationship, positive linear relationship. So you can say that there is a strong positive linear relationship between number of cars and the revenue. And then the third question asks you to write the estimated regression equation. So inilah yang diperlukan, and then interpret the value of the slope. Value of slope ni adalah nilai B. Okay, so value of slope ni refer kepada nilai B. So this one refer kepada B value. Okay. So this is the value. Okay, refer to the B value from table. So you can say that here you can write the estimated regression equation. So the regression equation is just simply y, that is the dependent variable, equal to A is the first row, that is 0.396. So you have 0.396. And then you have B equal to positive 106.106. So ada positive. Kalau depan ni negative, that means it will be negative. Alright. But this one is positive, so plus 0.106 multiply with the independent variable x. And the slope coefficient here is given by 0.106. Okay, and then how do you interpret the slope? So macam mana kita nak interpret the slope? So this is the interpretation of the slope. Every increment of one car in 10,000 rented, the revenue will increase by 0.106 in billion. So this is how you write the answer. Okay, how you interpret the slope coefficient. So in general macam mana kita tulis? So saya tuliskan secara general macam mana you nak tuliskan nilai, nak interpret nilai slope So how do you interpret the slope? So let me give you the general form of the interpretation. Okay. So for the slope slope B. Okay, how to interpret? So the interpretation will be for every additional increase of 1 unit in X, Y will increase or decrease by B unit. Okay, this is how you write the slope. Okay, how you comment on the slope. So how do you comment on the slope? For every additional increase of 1 unit in X, so you tukarlah X ni dengan variable yang diberi and then Y tukar dengan variable yang diberi. Kalau tadi kita ada for every additional increase 1 unit in the number of cars rented. Okay, and then revenue will increase or decrease. So mana satu nak guna? Increase ke decrease? So the increase or decrease over here depends on the value of B. Okay, yang ni bergantung kepada nilai B. Kalau nilai B adalah positif, then increase. Kalau nilai B adalah negatif, then decrease. Okay, so that means in this situation, so this is depending on B. So in this case, this depends on B value. Okay, such that if B is positive, then it will be increase. If B is negative, then this will be decrease. Okay, so the increase or decrease depends on the value of B. Okay, kalau katakan nilai B tu positif, maka dia akan jadi increase lah. So you buatlah yang decrease tu. And then if the value of B is negative, then it will be decrease. Okay, nampak So that is for the slope coefficient. Macam mana pula kalau kita nak explain untuk constant? Okay, how do you explain the constant? So interpretation for the constant. Okay, suppose that for constant A. Okay, how do you interpret? For constant for X is equal to 0, then y is equal to a. Okay, unit tu you gantilah dengan unit yang sesuai. So bergantung pada soalan. Saya letakkan unit sendirilah. So yang ni unit tu by 1 unit ni maksudnya kalau ni 1 car lah kalau katakan tadi. So if for every additional increase of 1 car in number of car rented, then ditukar ni. So macam ni sama juga. For x is equal to 0. So x ni apa tadi? Number of car rented kan. So for number of car rented equal to 0, then revenue is equal to berapa unit A tadi. So A adalah 0.396, so adalah revenue unit. So in this situation, the value of A can be meaningful or not meaningful depending on the situation. Nilai A ni boleh bermakna ataupun tidak mempunyai makna bergantung pada situasi. Kebiasaannya kalau dalam data mempunyai nilai kosong, okay, dalam data yang kita gunakan untuk penggunaan mempunyai nilai kosong, maka ianya adalah bermakna. Tetapi kalau dalam data tidak ada nilai kosong, dia tidak bermakna. Okay. So ada juga dalam keadaan di mana nilai A ni bermakna adalah contohnya dalam keadaan kita in manufacturing process. Okay, in manufacturing process, for those yang kerja dalam manufacturing process, dia yang tahulah. So sometimes there is no production but there is a cost incurred. Okay, dalam ekonomi pun you belajarkan you ada the fixed cost dengan variable cost. Okay, so even though there is no production, even though there is no productivity going on, but the cost is still there because cost is consists of 2 items, the variable cost and the fixed cost. So variable cost adalah bergantung kepada production, tapi fixed cost adalah tak bergantung langsung pada production. Maknanya walaupun production adalah kosong, fixed cost masih lagi tetap ada. Contohnya kalau katakan hari itu company itu tutup, okay, tidak ada production, tapi mesin tetap berjalan sebab mesin tak boleh nak off, tak boleh nak on, tak boleh nak terus tinggalkan. Kalau kita tinggalkan macam kalau kita off terus nanti akan bermasalah untuk kita nak up balik and so on. So mungkin mesin tu masih lagi berfungsi, bergerak, masih lagi menggunakan cost seperti electricity dan sebagainya. So this is what we call as the fixed cost. Okay. So in this situation, even though there is no production, but the cost is still there. Okay, so this is the situation where constant A is meaningful whenever there is when the value of x is equal to 0. And most of the time when the value of x equal to 0, the constant A value is not meaningful. Okay, bergantunglah pada situasi. Okay. Contohnya kalau katakan perkaitan antara income dengan saving. Katakan seseorang itu dia ada income dia kosong, tapi dia save 10,000. Logik tak logik? Tak ada income tapi dia save. Dia ada saving. Okay, dia boleh save 10,000. So mana datang 10,000 tu? So this is the case where it is not meaningful. Alright? Okay, this is for the slope. And then the next one they ask you the coefficient of determination. Okay, apa pula coefficient of determination ni? Okay, coefficient of determination ni nak dapat kat mana? So coefficient of determination simply is the square of the correlation value. Okay, it is the square of the correlation value. So maksudnya nilai korelasi tadi 98.2 kan? So 0.982, right? So if you look at this diagram, the output here, you have the R is 0.982. When square the value of R, you get 0.964. The R squared here is what we call as the coefficient of determination. Okay, the coefficient of determination. So what is the coefficient of determination measures? The coefficient of determination measures the variation in y in the dependent variable that can be explained by the variation in the independent variable. The higher the value of r squared, the more accurate the prediction will be. Okay, maksudnya kat sini nilai R kuasa 2 ni adalah nilai di mana dia mengukur variasi di dalam pemboleh ubah X, berapa banyak variasi dalam pemboleh ubah Y dapat diterangkan oleh variasi di dalam pemboleh ubah X, independent variable. Okay, semakin tinggi nilai coefficient of determination, semakin tinggi nilai R squared, semakin accurate, semakin tepat prediction yang dibuat menggunakan garis ataupun persamaan regresi yang kita dah bina tadi. Okey. Macam ni dia makin tinggi lah. So maknanya dia punya kejituan tu, dia punya accuracy tu is very high. Alright. So in this case, you can say that the coefficient of determination R squared is equal to 0.964. So it is presented in the form of point form. But bila kita nak explain, we always explain it in the form of percentage. Okay, kita selalu explain dalam bentuk percentage form. So in this situation, when we talk about the explanation, we can explain in the form of percentage. So that means nilai R squared tadi 0.964 tu bila nak interpret, change this value into percentage. So we have 96.4%. So what is it? So 96.4% of the variation in the revenue can be explained by the number of cars rented by the company. Okay, so that is how you explain the coefficient of determination. In general, you can say like this. Okay. R square percent of the variation in y can be explained by x. Okay, that is in general. So you can just say that R squared percent okay, this is in general, you tukarkanlah dengan y dengan x tu. So R squared percent of the variation in y can be explained by x ataupun can be explained by the variation in x, boleh juga. Okay, so this is how you answer the question. So based on this information, kita boleh dapatkan lah. And lastly, what you can do is to predict the value of certain information based on the regression equation yang kita dapat. So contohnya yang ni ada dia tanya. Okay, saya go through. Contohnya. So saya go through satu lagi ni. So saya go through satu lagi contoh ni untuk you all tengok. Okay, contoh ni pula dia katakan the table below shows the data obtained in a study on the number of absences and the final grades yang tadi. So dia buat dalam bentuk dia is run using SPSS and the output received is this one. So you get this output. So the scatter plot is the same as the one yang kita dapatkan tadi. And then dia ada model, dia ada R squared, dia punya R, that is the correlation coefficient 0.944. And the R squared is 0.892. So that means in this situation, 89.2% of the variation in test score can be explained by the number of absenteeism. Okay, can be explained by the number of absenteeism. Sebab kita ada final grade dengan number of absences. So that means untuk yang R squared ni nanti ada 0.892. So we can just say that 89.2% of the variation in final score can be explained by the number of absences. Okay, so that is for the value of R. And kalau you perhatikan kat sini, the value of R squared. In this situation, the value of R is 0.944, very close to 1, right? Okay, very close to 1. Tapi sebenarnya yang ni ada negatif depan tu dia tak nampak negatif. So it's supposed to be negative 0.944. Dia tertinggal negatif kat depan ni. So supposed to be, so this have to be ada negatif kat depan So negative 0.944. It's supposed to be negative 0.944. Sebab yang ni adalah berkurangan kan. So number of absence semakin tinggi number of absence, maka test score semakin rendah. Okay, so it should be negative 0.944. And then kalau you perhatikan dekat sini, okay, this is the coefficient. So you have the constant to be 102.493 and number of absent is negative. Sebab tadi ada negative correlation kan. So you should have the coefficient for the absent to be negative also. Sebab demi korelasi tadi adalah negative. So this one, the slope should be also negative. Alright. And this is significance. So you can say that identify the independent and dependent variable. So dependent variable adalah yang di luar. So kalau tengok dekat dalam coefficient ni, the one in the table is number of absences. So that means the independent variable will be number of absences and the dependent variable will be final grade. And then referring to the scatter diagram, describe the relationship. There is a strong negative. Dia punya berkurangan kan. So strong negative linear relationship between the number of absences and final grade. And then to write the estimated equation, okay, estimated regression equation. So you have y equal to the constant 102.493 minus the slope coefficient that is b, negative 3.622. This is why you have minus in front here. Okay, ada negative kat depan tu, x. And then the slope here is negative 3.622. So macam mana nak explain? As the number of students absences increases by 1, okay, the final grade will decrease. Kenapa decrease? Sebab nilai slope adalah negative. Okay, the final grade will decrease by 3.622 mark. So kat sini tak perlu letaklah nilai negatif dia, sebab kita dah kata decrease dekat sini. So you don't need to put negative in front here anymore. Okay, so decrease by the value of the mark is 3.622, right? And then determine the coefficient of determination. So you get the value is 0.892. So that means convert into percentage. You get it to be 89.2%. So you can say that 89.2% of the variation in y, that is grade, can be explained by the number of students absences. That is the value of x. Okay, so that is for the coefficient of determination. And finally, you are asked to predict. Predict the grade if the number of absent is 10. Okay, so in this case, you have to be very, very careful whether to substitute 10 or substitute other values. So sometimes dia akan bagi keliru sikit. Dalam data dia bagi yang simplified form, katakan dalam 1000. Okay, dia letakkan 2, tapi 2 tu maksudnya 2000. So bila masuk kat sini, katakan dia suruh ganti dengan 10,000. So sepatutnya you kena gantikan dengan 10, bukannya 10,000. Sebab 10,000 tu, kalau refer balik pada data yang asal punya format, dia akan jadi 10 saja. Okay, so that is the important thing that you need to know whenever you want to substitute the values. Alright. So in this case, yang ni digantikan dengan 10 sebab data asal pun memang tidak ada short form. Okay, kalau tengok dekat data asal, tidak ada short form, katakan final grade atau SN tu dalam bentuk format yang lain. So 6 maksudnya 6 lah. 2 maksud dia 2. Bukannya 6 maksudnya 60. Bukan So you can just substitute it directly. So kat sini you substitute directly. Gunakan formula yang kita ada tadi. Equation yang kita ada yang ni. Y equal to 102.493 minus 3.622.x. And then you substitute the value of x with 10. Calculate, you get the score to be 66.273. So that means in this case, it is predicted that the score is equal to 66.273 if the number of absenteeism is 10 days. Okay, itu yang dimaksudkan. Alright. So this is the end of bivariate analysis for the correlation and regression analysis. Okay, this complete our discussion on chapter 5 and this complete our syllabus for the semesters. Okay, yang lain-lain tu ada soalan, exercise, you all boleh cuba. Kalau ada masalah, you all boleh tanya pada saya.